Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
It's like every time.
You just can't get committed to anything.
I know. It's terrible. It's like it's like you two are divorced and I'm like the kid that you share on
It's all because I did like Alien Covenant. It's all because of that.
I'm sure. I am not surprised. Alright, so on that note, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Super2. Joining me today is the one, the only, the Axie Stevens.
You're trying really hard, jumble it up every time, and it's just gonna get harder and harder because my name is like 2 syllables.
I know. It's a chat. Do you have a middle name?
I do.
What's your middle name?
Sundeep.
Sunday?
Sundeep. It's Indian.
Okay.
You can always say Sunny. That's what my dad went by.
Alright. No, I heard Sunny, and I'm like, whoa, that's a surprisingly easy to pronounce Indian word. But I was wrong. Anyway.
Close enough.
Like, you've been talking, oh, that's a really good Star Wars name. Your middle name's already a good Star Wars name.
True.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about Steve's middle name.
Unfortunately.
We could do a whole episode on that. Anyway, Steve, what are we here to talk about today?
Today we're talking about the 2006
Yes.
crime thriller comedy movie Big Nothing.
Yeah, and the reason we're talking about this is because last week we reviewed Inherent Vice. Took me a minute to remember the name. And Steve wasn't there for that.
I was not.
Did you get a chance to watch it, though?
I did, yeah.
Okay, would you agree that it was a pretty bad movie?
For me to call it a bad movie, I'd have to understand what the fuck was happening.
Yes, okay, good. So, like, I was just really fucking annoyed with that entire movie, and just generally things that get kind of full of themselves.
Yep.
And dress themselves up in a lot of artistry without being coherent.
Yep.
And that was like a noir-style movie, like, with the whole mystery unraveling and stuff. And you said this is crime thriller, and yeah, I tend to agree, but I think there's enough elements of noir in here as well. It's just from the criminal side of things.
Oh, I absolutely agree, yeah.
Yeah, that it'd be a good one to see a good version of a noir story. So, unfortunately, the two people that were there for the Inherent Vice, I keep wanting to call it High Velocity for some reason. I know that's wrong. The Inherent Vice review aren't here to see a good movie, but, you know, whatever. It happens. So I kind of played my hand, but Steve, what did you think of Big Nothing?
I really liked it. I was surprised, partly because I didn't realize David Schwimmer was, like, kind of the lead character, and I think Friends is kind of a horrendous, immoral thing. So to see that dude can actually act, I'm like, holy shit, this is surprising. I'm having a hard time paying attention because this dude can act. But I really liked it. There was something about this, and it's not just the fact that Simon Pegg's in it, but there's something about this where, like, there's an Edgar Wright style script that's being directed by someone that's far more reined in. It's almost like you got an indie director with no budget to work off a script by someone like Edgar Wright that has almost always control of everything. Mm-hmm. Where, like, all of the quirkiness and, like, the fun interactions and stuff are all there, but, like, the physical tone of it is just so kind of flat that it creates this really cool, dark effect. I don't know, I just thought, like, aesthetically, the whole movie was really interesting.
I agree, and, like, it's not just that it's a fun story. Like, I remember watching this movie for the first time with some friends and just we were cracking the fuck up when spoilers, when the lady gets the axe to the head.
Fucking love that.
Yeah, and it's just like they just keep getting in deeper and deeper, and they're losing control of it. And that was always really entertaining about this movie. But it's also like it's got the tone really, really well for just a really fun, in a dark sense kind of movie. But it also is really visually interesting, not just in the way it's shot, though there are a couple of really interesting and just unique shots, not even getting into like the stunning ones, but particularly in the way it's edited.
Yeah.
The sound mixing and the soundtrack use here is really, really good, particularly the scene where they're driving with the two dead bodies in the trunk, and it like starts doing all those wipe transitions and stuff as they're driving the car around. That's a really good scene.
Oh yeah, I agree. One of my favorite cuts in the whole movie is when I think his name's Charlie, like when he's talking to the cop and like it's the sort of classic like this dude's guilty, the cop doesn't entirely know, but he's slowly building himself up for it. And then as he's inspecting the ground, Simon Pegg just flies up out of the corner and hits him over the head.
Yes.
We're like, it's so mundane. It's shot like it's nothing, but it's hysterical.
Oh, definitely. It's just so out of nowhere that it just comes out at you like that.
And it doesn't even call attention to itself after it happened. It just keeps going.
Mm-hmm. You don't get a break in this movie, right? It's just one thing right after the other just hits you.
It's literally only 80 minutes long, which is surprising because like it has to keep having that frantic pace, but like the human moments and stuff are really interestingly scattered all around. Like the stuff with the cop, it lasts a good 5-10 minutes before he gets hit over the head.
Yeah, it's that almost Hitchcockian, the dead body in the trunk and rope, where it's just like you're cringing every single time something happens, and like David Schwimmer's character Charlie, he has to just keep coming up with lie after lie to make it seem plausible. And so, like, he lies. Yeah. He's like, oh, there's some blood on the floor. Oh, yeah, I broke a vase and cut myself. And he has to grab a knife and cut himself. And he's like, ow!
Oh, my God.
See, look here. Oh, that looks painful. Like, that's really, really good. And the cop totally knows that something's up. I really like that as he's leaving. He's like, care if I watch that DVD you were watching? You know what they say, curiosity killed the cat. Yeah, but in my line of work, the cat usually gets promotion and a raise. Like, oh my God, that's a really good scene.
Yeah, it's really fun, witty dialogue all around, despite like some of the more tense stuff happening. Let me ask you this: were you? Because I didn't realize I was enjoying this movie as much as I did until I got to the point where you realized Charlie had that memory issue.
No, I know the point at which I went from going, okay, this movie's all right, to, God, this is really funny. And that was when Charlie was on the phone with the guy that's like talking about some issue with his IP address.
Oh, yeah.
And he just tries to do Gus's thing of cussing the person out when they're on hold, which I imagine is something telemarketers probably do, or IT people, whatever, probably do. That scene when that happened, and then like the manager just looks at him and they fucking turn around and go back to work. That is one of the funniest things. Like, I remember the first time I watched this was with two of my friends that lived next door to me back when I was with living at my mom's, and we were sitting there watching that scene. We got like a little like chuckle or something here or there. We were kind of interested in some of the stuff here or there, but then that shit happened and we fucking died laughing. Like my friend Andrew just had one of those really infectious laughs where like he would start and it wouldn't necessarily even be that funny, but because he was laughing so hard, you would, you know?
Gotcha, yeah.
Yeah. So like that, every time I see that scene, that's immediately what I think of. And this is just, it's weird. I watched this again for, I don't even know how many times I've seen this, probably upwards of 10. And it wasn't as good as the first time I watched it. A lot of the humor and the surprise twists and turns here really do lend themselves to either a first watch or make sure you watch it with someone for the first time.
I got you. I guess that would make some sense, because I feel like, given how short it is and kind of how everything sort of leads into everything else, it could become kind of predictable the more you watch it.
It's not necessarily predictable. It's just once you know the joke, it's not as funny when you see it coming.
That's fair.
So yeah, that's what it comes down to. But I still do enjoy this movie, and it's one of those things where I can actually have more fun talking about it at this point than I can watching it.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. It's really fun to like this is one of those things that I'm going to add to my list of like, okay, next time my friend comes over, I'm like, okay, we're going to watch this, just because I want, like, this seems like a fun, like, sort of party movie.
Yeah, and this came out in a period where, like, there was like a 3-year period where this was the movie to make, because there are 3 movies that come to mind. I'm trying to remember if one of them came out in 04 or 05. There are 3 movies that come to mind, though, and, like, they're all exactly the same tone. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Big Nothing, Lucky Number 11. Yep, absolutely. They're all, like, that is the trilogy in its own special little way in my mind.
Yeah, that whole, like, neo-noir black comedy kind of thing.
Yeah, where there's just, like, a lot of dark humor and just all kinds of stuff. Like, I always remember hearing Eric in videos with Cap and stuff say, "Oh, I love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. It's one of my favorite movies," and I've always wanted to, like, get his thoughts on this movie.
I got you. Yeah.
It's one of those things where this is just so to a certain sense of taste and stuff that I dig it every time I check it out.
Yeah, I don't know if I like this as much as I like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but because I love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I kind of, like, just am predisposed to like stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that kind of, like, Shane Blackey sort of dialogue on top of dialogue comedy, where, like, the tone and the physical events are so weirdly disjointed that it almost works.
How long has he been breathing liquid shit? 10 minutes tops. Like, that's the thing, it's just such a quotable movie.
It really is. I saw the poster for it, I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. But yeah,
really? What about it, like, made you feel that way?
I don't know, there's something about that poster that just seems, like, so overly neon and aggressive that I didn't think of this as, like, noir comedy. Like, it's just so bright. The dominant color on that thing is pink and orange. Like, it just doesn't... that poster did not reflect what the experience of this was going to be.
Makes sense.
It also kind of, like, throws me, because, like, this is not the kind of thing I expect Simon Pegg to do. But he kind of, like, he has the perfect balance between reading himself in and still being his sort of, like, manic comedy.
You know, it's weird because for the longest time, given that Simon Pegg is so much heavier in this film than he is in any of his others, the fact that he doesn't use an accent in this film, for a little while when I first saw this and, like, Shaun of the Dead was already out and all that stuff, I was like, is that the same dude or no? Because, like, it just, he's a very distinct looking guy, but just those couple little details, the amount of weight he had on him at the time, the fact that he doesn't talk in the accent, really threw me on it. I could not tell for the longest time watching this.
Yeah, no, that's fair. He's not, it's not that he's not like himself, it's that he's just kind of, like, in a different sort of getup, and it's hard to, like I can't physically connect this to, like, something like his Edgar Wright movies, but it's clearly still a Simon Pegg movie.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I was really surprised by, like, how stylistic it could be, despite, like, how sort of tonally flat it was. Like, the song choices for this are really, really good. More so than something like because I mean, I love I think Guardians of the Galaxy is a really fun movie. I think Volume 2 is a really good movie. But like with those movies, the sort of use of the songs and the scenes that they correspond to lose their luster after the first couple watches. I feel like the energy that the songs in this movie give it are just so much more natural because it doesn't feel like it's calling attention to the fact that these are the songs of that time or any time really. It's a very similar thing to Baby Driver if you've watched that yet or not.
No, I haven't had a chance to see that, and I agree. I really like the song choices in this, but the interesting thing is, I know for a fact these songs are, just things that bands did, played on the radio a little bit in mid-2000s and kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're not super popular songs almost makes me feel like that they were commissioned for the movie, Well,
and yeah, that's the cool thing about it is that like they're not these weird quintessential songs that you get because you're a studio release. They're literally just things you hear that sort of like the filler stuff on the radio in between the 2 or 3 songs you remember.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. it's like there's the soundtrack to the movie is like an act. It's not overly bearing on its thematic importance. It's not overly bearing on its recognizability. It's just the score of the experience of the movie. Also,
the interesting thing about that is it allows this movie to be not dateless, certainly, but less stuck in a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, there's a lot of comedies that'll use a popular song. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. But there's a lot of comedies that will do something like that. Like, I think it's in American Pie, they used a song that was, like, out at the time. Or every movie from, like, 2000 to 2003 used the damn song All-Star. It was, like, a contractual obligation to use the song All-Star. And it just immediately dated it. But using these songs that, like, I don't know this band, I don't know who they are, I've never heard this song before in my life, I've never heard it since in any other context but this movie, it just feels like it's, like, in a weird way, like a Bond song or something. Like, they just got a band to do the soundtrack for the movie.
Yeah, and I mean, I also have, like, and it sounds like an insult, but it isn't. Like, I have no desire to, like, look up these songs or anything. Like, they're just kind of tied to this movie for me now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, like, it's interesting how they fit in that way, and because of that, like, you said, like, it took you a minute to remember 2006. I don't think... I'm trying to think how much we see people using cell phones in the movie.
I don't remember a lot of cell phones. Maybe one.
Yeah, maybe
his wife calls him once.
Yeah.
Or he calls his wife. Something like that.
His wife calls the deputy, I know. Like, that was a big tension moment.
Right.
But there are a lot of, like... There are quick moments of cell phones, but not, like, where you see so much of it that, like, you can, see the buttons being pressed and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, it's almost the little things that remind me more of, like, 10 years ago, where, like, his TV is clearly 10 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, little things like that. And then, like, his factoids about DVDs, like, yeah, that only makes sense in 2006.
Yeah, but there's, like, so few of those things actually date this movie that, I could maybe get away with lying to you to tell you it came out today.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not a thing you consciously think about, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's just enough about it that's, like, I almost wish they didn't have the cell phones, if not for that one scene where his wife calls the deputy, because there's just so many little things from, like, you could almost get away with this.
Yeah, I agree.
And it makes it kind of modernly timeless. Like, it just kind of seems present, and that's really impressive for a comedy, which is usually, comedy's usually the fastest thing to age, right?
Yeah.
Like, you and I both love Looney Tunes. Some of the jokes in Looney Tunes just don't stand up to a modern context. You have to understand what they're joking about to get the jokes half the time.
Well, and so much of comedy, particularly in the U.S., transitions into, like, reference humor that when the point of reference becomes less normal, the comedy just stops working.
Why Family Guy is irrelevant.
Basically, yeah. Why South Park has to work as hard as it does, and why you have to keep up with it for it to maintain its humor.
Oh, definitely. Like, I remember at one point in time dying laughing watching the episodes of South Park that were, you know, satirizing the BP oil spill.
Yeah.
I remember losing my shit laughing at that when it was airing at the time. I went back at one point and rewatched those episodes like 2-3 years after the fact. Barely cracked a smile half the whole way through.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, the context is not there. Humor operates based on very specific ideas of what's normal in a context. For something to be funny and disruptive, you have to have something that is ordered in the first place. And so, like, not only is writing a comedy hard, but, like, maintaining what's funny about it is going to be even more difficult if you're relying so much on references and stuff. This is why things like, say, Back to the Future or Ghostbusters, where the comedy isn't about the references they're making or even their culture, and it's entirely about, like, the characters' relationships age well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, like, a lot of comedy just fades away with time, whereas this, you know, it's dark comedy, but this is pretty well gonna stick. I think this movie is just as funny 10 years now as it was 10 years later as it was back then.
Yeah, because the comedy is the situation. It's not added to it.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. It's what's the playwright's name? Neil Simon?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does a lot of stuff that's really up this same alley.
Yeah, I agree.
Where he does a lot of that, like, witty, dialogue driven, in the moment character interaction humor.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, this is like Screenwriting 101. This is Shane Black. This is everything that you're seeing is necessary for everything else that happens. And so the problem with a lot of comedies, like a lot of the shitty comedies, all of the filler romantic comedies that come out over the course of time, where the situation is itself ridiculous, but everything surrounding the ridiculous situation has to get established first, so you have to have cutaway gags and shit, and then everything after the funny situation has to somehow still be funny despite not being in that situation anymore. Well, like, the whole notion of a situational comedy starts to fade away because you're stretching for runtime.
Yeah, and then you got, like, the other popular way to write comedy that just, you know, fine for a joke or two, but don't base a whole show around it. And that's what Chuck Lorre does with, like, 2.5 Men and Big Bang Theory.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, there's this joke that he is just absolutely in love with that gets used all the time by his writing staff in those shows. And that is when the audience gets the punchline, the character delivers the punchline, but they deliver it in a context that is only funny to the audience and has no bearing on the people they're talking to. So, like, if you just were to extend the scene out, everyone would go, the fuck?
Yeah.
If you were to suddenly put the scene in the real world. Good example of this is there's an episode of Big Bang Theory where, like, Sheldon is, like, going through some kind of agoraphobia thing about getting robbed, and he's afraid to leave his room, but he wants to talk to Leonard, so, like, he sneaks out his window and crawls along the ledge of their apartment building to get into Leonard's room, and while he's doing that, he's obviously frightened because he's, you know, high up, and he's, like, whispering to himself, I am the master of my own bladder. I'm the master of my own bladder. I'm the master of my own bladder. And then he goes out into the main apartment living room and stuff and gets, like, a net dropped on him that's electrocuting him, and he's sitting there convulsing on the floor, and Penny and Leonard run out, and they're like, oh my god, Sheldon, are you okay? He goes, yes, but I'm no longer the master of my own bladder. And, like, that's a little funnier when you're watching it. I'll give it that much. But that's a joke that doesn't make any sense. That sentence makes no fucking sense in the context of the characters of Penny and Leonard, and only makes sense in the context of the audience. And it's not that you can't do that. It's just that it's cheap, right?
Yeah, it's because at that point it's almost not even dialogue, because what that character is saying is not in relation to anyone else around them. It's entirely for the people watching. Exactly.
And that it's not that you can't do it. It's just that once you keep using that card, it's cheap and it's weak writing.
Yeah.
And this movie doesn't have any of that kind of humor in it, where it's like situational but only funny to the audience. Like the people in the situation are not laughing about it, but they're still like recognizing the absurdity of the situation that they keep getting themselves into.
Yeah. I mean, and so much of the comedy is a matter of like the characters talking and trying to deal with the situation without even addressing the fact that it is absurd is what makes so much of it funny. It's not that, because there's also that trope in TV shows and stuff where like characters will come together and like they'll talk about something, and then one of them will make like a weird pun statement about what they're going to do, and then you cut and they're doing that thing. But if you extend that conversation, then the people around the person who makes the pun is like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? And they have to explain. They skip over the dialogue that's explaining what's happening for the sake of the pun, for the sake of the audience. And so this doesn't do that. It's not a matter of like, the comedy isn't coming from like cutting scenes together for the sake of the audience. It's coming entirely from the fact that everything a character says, another character is reacting to, which is causing things to happen. It's a complete chain of cause and effect.
Exactly, and that's what makes it really sharp, really clever writing, in my opinion. I'm trying to think of an example of what you talked about there with that. I know exactly what it is, that edit cut where it's like, well, you see, cut here. And, like, they're in some place, it's like, wait, they drove, like, half an hour across town to get there before this person completed this sentence?
Exactly.
That shit is so... That's whack, to use a mid-2000s term. Alright, but we are talking about some of the strength of the writing from a comedic standpoint, and I do want to get into some of the plotting, though, particularly related to the reveals, especially the major reveal in the third act.
With Josie?
Yes, with Josie.
Because that gets really contrived, yeah?
Yeah, that is... I've always said that the mark of a good mystery story is you can figure it out before the characters. Like, they should give you everything you need to figure it out.
Yeah.
But this one... I mean... That is completely out of nowhere. That is, for as much as I'm praising the writing from a comedic standpoint, I gotta be honest, from a mystery writing standpoint, that is out of left field.
I'm kind of two minds about that, where, like, I feel like, given her personality, it's completely in line with who she is. But nothing in the situation gave me the idea that she was that like the plot did not support that twist as much as the character did.
Yeah, I could believe that was her. It's just it's not seated in any way, shape, or form.
No, I mean, because it's supposed to. It's like it's relying heavily on the fact that like shit, no one saw this coming.
Yeah, and like it would take so little to make it work, even just a little bit better, because they do such a good job of setting up the Oregon Undertaker for the final reveal of the film. But with her, there's no setup for it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, if you'd seen the eye, like, inspecting her flask, if you'd heard something just anywhere in the background about the Wyoming widow, anything like that would have helped sell it better if it had just been popularly or just on the outskirts known that there was a character like this. Like if in the talk about the Oregon Undertaker, like on a newscast or something, because I think we hear a little bit about it in a radio chatter at some point. If you just heard someone say Oregon Undertaker, Wyoming Widow, what's next? The Hollywood Hacksaw or something like that. Just if you you could have made it fit with the style of humor of the show or movie. You could have they're just anything to set it up a little bit would have been better. Just from a plot standpoint, I think it is really hackney.
Particularly because this movie only has one time where it's not moving linearly forward, and that's when Simon Pegg's explaining his connection to Josie. Mm-hmm. And so, like, you actually flash back to that. So, like, I'm not saying you needed to use that flashback to seed the ending, but if you're only going to have one scene in the entire movie that does not take place at the time of the movie, and not even just in dialogue, but physically cut to it, then it seems like there should be more kind of back and forth seeding happening. Like, I don't know. Like, if the entire movie is in a complete linear progression except for that moment, so that moment feels oddly tacked on. But if that's going to be tacked on, the fact that she's the villain at the end of it that should have been much more clear.
Mm-hmm. And it's weird, because I think that is the biggest flaw with the movie, but it's also such a great twist. And I love how David Schwimmer, Charlie gives her the middle finger as he goes out. Like, I really, really love that moment where he sips the Valium and says, "Don't spend it all in one place." That's really great. And she does a great job performing that, where she's like, "What? What?" And she starts ripping open the bag, and they just, like, cut out her screaming and just do the song coming over it. Man, I really like that. Sorry, folks, technical difficulties, but when he takes that flask and says, "Don't spend it all in one place," and she's, like, just starts freaking out, I really, really like that performance. I like how it's cut where the music just kind of overpowers her screaming, and she's just sitting there wondering what the hell to do in the middle of this, like, I don't. Maybe it's just me. Maybe this is like someone else Chris has moved for. I don't know. Steve, do you know where to find your nearest tar pit?
I don't.
Is that your fault, or is that the movie's fault? Like,
a little bit of both, maybe.
Yeah. Bit of column A, bit of column B. It's just one of those things. Like, she's in the middle of the tar pit. I'm thinking to her, where the fuck do you go to find a goddamn tar pit?
And I mean, as much as that twist doesn't entirely work, I really like the ending. Like, I love the whole hitchhiking thing. She's got the poison flask, and then that dude's got a body in the back of the trunk. Like, there's the fact that the twist happens is a problem, but where the movie takes it after you give it that is still good.
Yeah, and it feels like it's better set up than it ultimately is because of that comeuppance for her.
Yeah, like it knows where it's going, even if it's not always right about getting you there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the weird thing about stuff like this, particularly in mysteries. If there's a mystery where a twist is out of left field, 9 times out of 10, the rest of that ending stops working.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, and this is why stuff like this is so hard to write, but it's sort of like a Shane Black thing here again, where, like, it's not even necessarily about the plausibility of the events as much as it's about the character's commitment to the scenario.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. The fact that the ending still feels set up with the Oregon Undertaker showing up.
Yeah.
That really helps make the fact that the Wyoming Widow twist doesn't really work a bit better.
Yeah.
And as much of out of left field as that comes, it comes from the right source if it's going to come out of left field. It's not like she just hands him a flask and as he's sitting there gasping for breath on the ground, she reveals all this.
Yeah.
You get that reveal like 5 minutes earlier, and it seems like a red herring, but it's not.
Yeah.
And that helps a little bit too. It comes from like this detective character that they've introduced. That really does help to sell that a bit better.
Yeah, I mean it's doing a lot of work to get you there, and I kind of appreciate it. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me talking about the movie or even in watching the movie. It only ever bothers me in that first second where it happens. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, ultimately, if that's what you want to do with it, because of how good it is before and after it, I'm almost willing to give it to them.
Yeah, you know, every movie gets a gimme.
Yeah.
That's certainly fair. But yeah, like it's everything that surrounds that makes it work, though, right? It's the fact that Charlie gives her the middle finger as he goes off. It's the fact that she gets comeuppance. It's the stuff with the way they kill that detective, which is probably one of the most hilariously brutal murders in a movie ever.
It's so funny. I felt bad for laughing a little bit. Right?
Where he's just sitting there eating that lollipop?
Yup.
Holy shit, that was dark.
And then, like, in the back of your mind, it's just like, he's diabetic.
Yeah. And he's, like, sitting there, like, crying and throwing up as he's doing it.
Oh, my God. It's great.
Like, dude, really? That feels like a Joker murder, doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, my God. Like, they have the guns. What? They're gonna throw the body in the tar anyway. What are they even trying to cover up at this point? It's just sadistic.
It's great, though. I fucking love it.
Yeah, and like it really goes all back to that scene with David Schwimmer's character Charlie in the house as he's cleaning up the blood from the guy he drowned in shit.
Yep.
And he sees the statue of Jesus with the water, and he's like, he's weeping, Gus. He's weeping for our sin. It's like, how far has this guy come? My word.
It's true.
But yeah, all the comeuppance at the end really does help sell it. But then there's that last bit of irony as the call from the book publisher plays on the answering machine just one day after he did all this stuff to wreck his life.
Kind of depressed me a little bit. Where, like, I wasn't expecting... For one, I wasn't expecting the whole Charlie memory thing at all. Like, I just thought that he was just this weird kind of quirky character. And so, like, that conversation in the car took me out for a second because I didn't see it coming. But then the whole drinking the poison thing, I didn't see coming either. And then on top of it, the book publisher. Mm-hmm. Well, like, this guy's track through this movie is so absurd, but you buy into it so well because they define him and his relationship to the scenario so well. It may be a little bit thick to, like, have that book publisher call and just kind of, like, throw the irony in your face, but I don't care because I really liked it.
It's really bittersweet is what it comes down to. Like, it's good to know that his family's... Like, you got that contrasted with the imagery of his daughter drawing on money.
Yep.
And
again, really thick. It's not being subtle, but it still works.
Yeah, it is. It's just one of those things where, like, it totally sells itself, and it just makes you go, oh man, he just went through all of that and lost what time he had left with his family, and he didn't need to. And, like, it's that moment where he says, like, before he drinks it and everything, he mentions his wife. He's like, Penelope was right. You don't need money to have happiness. I'm like, oh my God, just twist the fucking knife.
This is one of those things where, like, there's a distinction between something like this and Inherent Vice, where one of them is trying to be pompous and artsy, and so it's in your face about its symbolism because get its symbolism. The other one, this movie, is confident in its presentation and is in your face about the symbolism because it spends so much time building it for you. So at the end, it's just doing it at a victory lap.
Yeah, and that's the really impressive thing is, like, Rasco mentioned during the Inherent Vice, and I do feel like people that listen to this episode, go listen to the Inherent Vice episode too, because I feel these are pretty good companion episodes of Geeky Gentlemen.
They're kind of interesting companion movies too, just in general.
Yeah, well, that's why it made me choose this and break formula for the show, because I wanted to talk about this specifically in the context of the other film.
Yeah.
Like, Rasco made the point about Inherent Vice that the director doesn't care if you like the movie or not. And I'm okay, that's dumb. Sure, do whatever you want. If you can con Hollywood into giving you millions of dollars to do it, fine. But this is a team that clearly wants you to like their movie, but doesn't want everybody to like their movie.
Yeah, they made their movie.
Exactly, but they still made it in a way that was presentable, comprehensible, and fitting. During the Inherent Vice review, Connor brought up a point where it was like, well, it's kind of like all trippy and stuff because it's like what it feels like to be high. Go watch Easy Rider. It's a better movie that does the same thing.
I do like Easy Rider.
Yeah. This takes you into a really dark world and has a lot of absurdism in it, but it does so in a way that is confident and clear without holding your hand. People explain things once. They say, his wife says, the Eye is coming into town. The what? No, it's the Who, the Eye. He's a super investigator. They see this guy, and they crash into him, and then he shows up at the police station. They're like, oh my god. And he goes, oh, hi, I'm the Eye. We already know who he is now. He's introduced once, he says his name, and now we know who he is, and then he's this big hotshot detective. And then they prove it twice, basically in a row, with him doing the whole corner thing. That seems really impressive at first, and then it's like, oh, but he's actually an idiot. He doesn't understand that it was them that did it. And then they completely subvert that. He goes, no, he knew the whole time. He was playing with them and followed them. That was that's just really confident and well-presented filmmaking that doesn't meander or get obsessed about itself. And again,
yeah.
They're the one thing I can say about Inherent Vice that was just objectively really well done was the cinematography. That was a really gorgeous looking, well shot film. I like a lot of the shots in this too. The opening shot of the POV on a swing set was really cool, and I've never seen a movie do it before or since.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's not a matter. It's obvious. It's kind of in your face about the symbolism all the way through. The shots are artsy, but it works because everything around it supports that symbolism. It's the actual symbol is a system around the movie. It's not just thrown in there like some Zack Snyder trash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that really just helps sell the whole thing. There's just a lot of really well shot moments in this, and really cool ones. I love the shot from inside the M&M machine when they do the whole Matrix scene. That was cool.
Yeah.
I like the shot when they throw the priest into the septic tank. It's just a basic overhead shot, but it works.
Or I especially because after Simon Pegg knocks out the cop, and then the camera shifts so that we're constantly looking up at Simon Pegg and David Schwimmer as they're talking, as if we're the cops body laying on the ground, and that's a really clever shot.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a hard one to do, but it works for that scenario.
Yeah, and they open the movie with the trunk scene, right?
Oh yeah,
the Tarantino. Everyone's done this in film school, but somehow Tarantino got the credit for the trunk shot. The Tarantino, he just did it the
best, I guess.
He did it the best. He did it the first in mainstream movies. All I can figure. And that's not even true. He stole it, but whatever. You have the Tarantino-esque trunk shot And, like, it opens that. It's like, that's just always a really cool shot in movies, and it's always ominous as fuck. You were never doing anything good when you were putting the camera inside the trunk.
Yeah.
Never. You ever watched the Joker vlogs? I can't remember if we've talked about
we've
this.
talked about this before.
Okay, yeah, there's like this really interesting use of the whole found footage style of actually having the trunk shot make a little more sense. And not breaking the narrative because he throws a character in the trunk with the camera.
Right.
And so when he opens it, you get the trunk shot, but it's from someone's perspective. It's kind of neat. Anyway, regardless of all that, like, there's really interesting visual shots. It does a lot. Like, 90% of this movie is at night, and it looks great.
Yeah, and it also doesn't have to do that obnoxious mystery thriller thing of if it's being shot at night, it has to have, like, all these neon contrasts all over the place.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple shots of that when they're, like, driving through city, but it's a small enough town that, like, they don't break it to give you that, you know? You're just...
It's the Blade Runner thing of, like, so much of that movie is so dark, and the world has to be so colorful that the color is meant to be aggressive and in your face, and I get that, and I can appreciate that on a thematic level. At the same time, it exhausts my eyes, and I don't want to see that for 2 hours.
Yeah. And this, like, it's so small scale. They're in just some, backwater town that's got, like, probably a population of, like, 2,000 people or something, rinky-dink like that. And so it just works. It's like, it does a visual that not enough films do, and it's something I've always really liked, which is wet pavement that is incredibly reflective.
Yeah.
I don't see that in enough movies. Maybe it's just one of those things that's really hard to capture on film, but, like...
You're doing animation a lot.
Yeah, you're right. I drove up and down to when my dad was living in Michigan. I drove like 2.5 hours every other weekend for years there, and one of the coolest things to see is when it was raining at night and the highway got wet, and just the lights of the cars and the signs lighting, like just the metal signs getting the light hit from the cars, lighting up and reflecting really blurrily, that's a word now, on the road. It's just always this really, really interesting visual, and it looks even cooler when you don't have a lot of lights. So, like, you just have those couple, like, sometimes traffic lights will do it. It always looks great.
Yeah.
So I don't see that enough on film, and it's all over the place in this one, and I really like that. Okay, so we've discussed how it's shot. We've discussed a lot of the characters.
We talked about the music.
The comedy. What character we haven't talked about is Penelope, his wife.
Oh, yeah. So that could have been almost a trope now of the good, loyal, innocent partner that didn't sign up for this. Kind of like Skylar and Breaking Bad kind of thing.
No one likes you, Skylar.
Yeah, literally no one does, so fuck that. Or, like, even in Weeds, like, almost all the time when a quote-unquote good person has to do bad things, their partner is always the one that's too innocent for it. And the fact that she's a cop was, on its own, a cool way to turn that formula around.
Mm-hmm.
And that the answer to his question early on is that, no, I'd arrest you.
Oh my god, that is such a funny scene.
I love it. Which is like not even a second hesitation. I'm like, no, if you felt the need to do this, then something's wrong.
And like it's echoing just a bit, Steve.
Sorry.
It's interesting because she has that perspective of police officers. Like, I understand that desperation makes people do desperate things, but it's still not okay, and so I would arrest you. And that is the thinking she has, and I have no doubt in my mind that she honestly believes that when she says it, and then it is such a great subversion when she is confronted with what she knows that her husband has gotten up to now. And it's such a, like, that's such a good scene of her on the bridge with their daughter in her back seat holding that deputy's badge. Man, that's a good scene.
It really is. She's not in the movie a whole lot, but every time she shows up, she does exactly the opposite of what you'd expect her to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's... Go ahead.
Sorry, and it's not even like it's not like her characterization is constantly out of left field. It's just that she's a developed person, and she's just not playing to your stereotypes of this situation.
Exactly. It's really interesting that you can have a character who doesn't show up on film that much actually be this... I wouldn't even say integral to the plot. She is a sideline character at best, but she's a very clearly well-developed character in what we need to know about her, and she gets an arc. And that's impressive.
She's emotionally invaluable to the story despite not being there for very long. It's a different movie if he's not married to her specifically.
Yeah, like, and I love the wrench she throws into things when Gus and Josie find out that she's a cop, and that Charlie's married to her.
Yeah.
That is a really good scene where, like, you didn't feel the need to mention you're married to a fucking cop. No one asked.
Because people have to ask.
Are you a cop? No. Are you married to a cop? Shit. Yes. Like, that's a really fun thing, and it creates this extra level of, Jesus fucking Christ, can one thing go right for these people?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. That's something we didn't talk about with the comedy aspect, though. When we traditionally talk about comedies, there's like this general rule of the person is doing everything right, but things just won't work out for them, and that's the joke.
Yeah.
This is kind of the epitome of that style of writing with really dark subject matter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's perfectly situational, where it's not just like luck is completely and utterly always screwing them over. It's that what they started with in the beginning was already ridiculous, mm-hmm. and so they're just playing into that world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that really works. So, like, of course, they have what is, I don't know, it's a little bit of a ridiculous plan, but it's believable enough that they could get the browsing information of a priest and then reverend and then blackmail him. Sure, yeah, I could see that. $200,000, even $100,000 is pretty silly, but you know, it makes sense, and maybe he could get the money together or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's believable, but it's also just inherently funny.
Yeah, but of course that guy has a snuff film ring, and I love the scene where Gus explains the plot to that point.
Oh, I love that. It's great.
I always like when movies do that. Like, that's in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Like, 2 or 3 times they explain the plot of that movie to that point, and that is really funny. It's like Jay finally gets to California at like the beginning of the 3rd act of the movie, and he explains the entire plot up to that point, and this guy goes, "Man, I have no idea what anything you just said meant, but it really got to me." And that's always just a trope I enjoy. But yeah, Gus explains the whole plot of what the fuck has gone wrong to that point to Josie, and she just rolls with it, man.
It's true.
Oh, that's so silly. All right. What else with this? We need like 10 to 15 more minutes of content.
Have you watched anything else by this director?
You know, I feel bad. I've just been calling him this director this whole time. I don't even know who directed it.
It's Jean something. I remember Jean something. I don't remember exactly what.
Okay. See, it's weird. I'm looking at the post. I just looked up Big Nothing to Google it. I'm looking at the poster, And when you said neon, I wasn't sure what you meant because there are apparently 2 posters. One of them's with them all in jail. I like the one of them all in jail more.
Yeah, that one's better.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that one before.
Anyway, director.
So this director did Dead End, which I've never seen, Big Nothing, which we were talking about now, and then they wrote Hellphone, which I've never even heard of. This is a really indie person.
I guess. Yeah.
The Brotherhood of Tears doesn't even have a workable link.
Wow. Huh.
The name of the film festival they're at in the photo doesn't have a workable link.
Man. And is he the writer too? Yeah. William Rosenfeld? He's credited differently. Oh, the guy that wrote this also, or co-wrote this, also wrote Zombievers, which is one of the greatest films of all time.
It's true. That movie's hysterical. I actually recognize almost no one in this movie except for, like, our 3 main actors.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who any of these people are. I don't know who the distribution company is.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of surprising.
I'm trying to remember what else Alice Eve was in. Okay, Star Trek.
She's in Star Trek Into Darkness. She's Out of Your League. A lot of, like, just dumb romantic comedy stuff.
Yeah, okay.
But she's actually a really good actress that almost always gets annoyingly sexualized in her movies.
Yeah, I like the way that they play with that here, where it comes up once and then it ends up being like the thing that she uses to mess with people.
Yeah. If people are curious, maybe I'll pick this at some point. But she was in Chris Evans' movie that he directed, Before We Go, and that's a really interesting movie.
She was in an episode of Black Mirror.
Which one was that?
Nosedive. She was the one that Bryce Dallas Howard was in. Howard.
Gotcha.
Dallas Dice Howard is now her new name. I like that more.
Me too. No, yeah, she's a good actress. Just doesn't get a lot of good stuff to do.
That's disappointing because she is fun here, and like she totally fits the role of the femme fatale for like the whole noir thing here, right?
Yeah, I mean she's exactly the same type of character and gives sort of the same type of performance as the woman in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, whose name I can't remember.
Oh, Grey's Anatomy lady.
Yeah, her.
Oh, I thought of another movie that fits this whole style: Ice Harvest with John Cusack.
I've not seen that.
Oh, it's not as good as the other ones, but it's still got its moments. It's very much in the same kind of vein.
Did you say it was called Ice Harvest?
Yeah, as Wichita Falls falls, so falls Wichita Falls. That's like the running line throughout that movie. It's really fun.
That's kind of fun. Oh, Billy Bob Thornton's also in this.
Yeah, Billy Bob Thornton, John Cusack.
Connie Nielsen.
Yeah.
Oh, Harold Ramis directed this. I might actually have to sit down and watch this.
Yeah, it's a Christmas movie.
I fucking love Christmas movies.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I enjoyed this. I was pleasantly surprised by it because I was editing my Mr. Miracle video while I turned it on to watch, and I figured I could just kind of like keep it running in the background and pay attention every now and then. But about 5 minutes in, I had to just stop working and sit down and watch the movie.
Yeah,
just because like I was having fun with it.
Mm-hmm. It's good to know how much of a priority you put the things I pick, Steve. Thanks for that.
It's true. I could be editing my own video essays, but I'd rather do this.
Thanks, Steve. Really right in the heart.
I'm sure. I love you, man.
Yeah. Internet hug. Hug this out, internet style. Hold on, I should probably like hug my microphone.
Is that how that works?
Yeah. Sorry, everybody listening on headphones. You got the internet hug too. You got in on that. It was a very big internet group hug. Probably of like, I'm gonna say this is one of our episodes that gets 20 to 30 views. Okay. I unfortunately don't have a ton else to say about this. I was actually surprised we managed to get to around the hour mark on this one.
Yeah,
all things considered.
There's not a lot of like deeper stuff to get into. Most of my thing with this movie is just it does a lot right that I've seen a lot of people do wrong, and that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That really helps with it. So the funny thing that came up while we were talking about Inherent Vice is the director of that directed There Will Be Blood, and I fucking love There Will Be Blood, but I hated
movie.
Yeah, I hated Inherent Vice. So I'm just like, I'm so annoyed that this director-writer team hasn't done much else I've heard of, besides, Zombievers, which I'm still waiting for the sequel to that movie.
I think everyone's waiting for that Blu-ray theatrical re-release on that.
Yeah.
As if anything's a cultural touchstone, it's Zombievers.
Well, I'm just waiting for Zombies, because that was a really good twist ending. Anyway. Alright, let's go ahead and go on to ratings for this. I think I'll give Big Nothing 4 out of 5 $100 bills that have been drawn on by a little girl.
I love that. It's adorable. Let's see. I'm gonna give it 4.5 out of 5 conveniently placed tar pits.
Yeah, good one. Good one. I'm surprised you rated it a little bit higher than me.
Yeah, I mean, my only real problem with it was the twist, but like you said, I just give it a pass because I think it works both afterwards and beforehand, so it almost doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, Steve, what are we going to be talking about next time?
Topic or review? Topic?
Topic.
Topic-wise, let me see. Let me check my notebook real quick. My notebook of various topics. Okay, have we ever done anything about
food? No.
Food? Okay, no. Have we ever done anything in relation to social media's impact on like art and culture?
We did an episode on social media.
Okay.
But
more specifically just on the notion of like how does art change when you can talk to the creators on Twitter and shit?
See,
I don't know if we've done that or if we can get an hour out of that.
I feel like we talked about that during the social media video, though. Like that was a facet of the conversation on social media, which people can certainly go watch. And if they don't feel like that was talked about enough, let us know. We can save that topic for later on down the line. But I feel like we've already talked about that.
Gotcha. Okay, well that's worth noting. At least for me, I can look that up later. But let's see. Okay, maybe here's a good one. Can we talk about the presentation of relationships in fiction? About how we do it well and how the majority of it is done badly?
Yes.
And why that's a problem?
Yes. God, yes.
Because, like, fucking sitcoms. How I Met Your Mother is one of the most toxic bullshit things ever. Ted Mosby is a horrible human being.
Not even going that far. The way that they present meeting people at bars is just encouraging rape.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
It's everything.
It's fucking bullshit. Literally all of almost everything you see about relationships on television and in movies is basically saying that men should have unfettered access to women's bodies because they are women, and fuck that.
Yeah, I'm down for this.
Cool.
They'll
be very angry.
Oh, this will be a great comment section.
Oh,
I wish I could frame the comment sections on things. I was watching a Cracked video that was talking about double standards for the questions women are asked in, like, the promotional events for movies and stuff. Like, Scarlett Johansson gets asked about what she had to do to get in her Black Widow costume, while Chris Evans gets asked character questions about Captain America, and the values that he has. And like I was watching the video, I'm like, yeah, they make some really good points here. And I start to scroll down to the comments, and the first comment is, "This is a video about sexism on the internet. What are you doing in the comments?" I'm like, yep. That just gonna stop right there. Scroll right back up.
That is the best comment for that particular video. I love it.
Yep. Crack's decent channel.
I like Cracked. I enjoy a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, majority of it.
I like Cracked more than I like Wisecrack, that's for sure.
Certainly. What was the series they did? I'm trying to remember. It's like an animated series that they had going for a while.
On crack.
It was really good, but I can't remember the name. Well, Crack likes to do this thing where they have like really long, drawn out titles for stuff, and
Right.
it like sure fine, but that makes it hard to remember.
It's true. I'm drawing a blank, honestly.
God damn it, hold on, let me look it up. This is going to drive me nuts, because I do want to talk about it, because they're doing a fundraiser, and I did want to mention that for a season 2.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Cracked YouTube. Okay. Maybe if they didn't post 12 videos a day. People Watching. People Watching is the name of the series. People Watching is a really interesting animated series, and we may even end up doing a video on the first season, because it's just like it's the kind of thing I love, where it's just people ranting about their issues with society and making really poignant and very personal and very human critiques about society, and it's probably the best animated thing I've found on the internet.
That's kind of badass.
Yeah, so like they're fundraising currently for a season 2. I'm planning to donate to it. I suggest checking out People Watching season 1 for anyone that's watched this far in the video. At this point, I'm just filling a little bit of time because, why not? It was already a shorter episode, so why not fill a little extra time and talk about a good series that's worth checking out. Anyway, that'll do it for this week's episode of Geeky Gentlemen. Please tune in next time when we talk about relationships in fiction. We're not just going to sit here and talk about our exes, though that could be a fun video too.
That will be a fun video when we're both drunk.
I don't drink.
Well, then we'll pretend you are, and I will actually get drunk.
Okay.
I have like 6 bottles of Jack Daniels, and I get free wine now, so...
There you go. All right, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the Exile.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.